Hello, welcome to WorkDoneLive. Today we're discussing future of work, survival skills in the future of work. Let me stop sharing and switch to my wonderful co-host here, Kirsten Campbell. Say hello.
Hello, hello. I'm the marketing tornado, Kirsten Campbell, still.
Marketing tornado, okay, forgive me. And I'm Joe Rogers, CEO of WorkDone. And today, as I mentioned, we're going to discuss adaptability and how that plays into the future of work. And what do I mean by adaptability? I'm talking about like the ability to change, to evolve or adjust to changing requirements on the job, in skill sets, resilience around being when the road gets bumpy, being able to chart a new path, and sort of the mindset that's necessary to actually be able to roll with those changes and even prosper from those changes. Because usually when there's chaos, there's opportunities. And, everybody's sort of knocked back on their heels for a minute, but the ones who lean forward again the soonest and sort of figure it out, they're the ones, who usually do well. So I don't know. Is that a good setup, Kirsten? What do you think?
I would just add the distinction of like resilience is sort of the coping with it, and adaptability is like the actions that would be taken to thrive. I guess that probably summarizes what you just said.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Resilience is the coping mechanism. Some people cope a lot better than others.
Yeah, as we've seen in a pandemic, I mean, there's some people that were just like totally knocked on their ass for a long time. And I mean, like even mentally, a lot of people still aren't really fully back to being normal. So there's a huge range there. What are you cackling at?
An old friend made a comment, Leanne Ward, who's now Leanne Jackson.
Hello, Leanne.
She said, just to say, Joe, well, I think you can see it.
I can't.
I've always had a commitment to the integrity of the clock. Which...
Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate your support on this one. It's important. We got to keep them in check.
Leanne, thank you so much for joining. And that actually reminds me, I need to talk to all the internet people out there. If you guys have any ideas or suggestions for topics related to the future of work, or as Kirsten likes to say, back to the future of work, please drop them in the chat. We're going to have a pretty freewheeling conversation here today. And the questions that come up are also for you to comment on. And so nice to see some friendly faces in the audience out there. So with regards to, I was, in my life, I've been sort of self-employed since college, and I was doing a lot of contract programming gigs, and then it kind of evolved into consulting, and I would find myself in different situations. And it's, in one sense, it's almost like a project might end after 2 months or 6 months or 2 years. And then I'm like looking for another project. And I feel like that the sort of topsy-turvy nature of that project work is, I've come to realize it's very rare. A lot of people have the experience of going to work for one company and they're there for many years, maybe multiple decades. It still happens a lot less, but it still happens. So I think this topic of how best to adapt and how to sort of, have the right attitude, I think it's important right now, given what's going on. And along those lines, I mean, have you ever had a surprise, Kirsten, where all of a sudden you're, maybe out of work, you need to reimagine or repackage your skills on a moment's notice?
Funny you ask, because you're talking to an old millennial who graduated directly into the Great Recession. And so a lot, like I worked so many just like short-term contract gigs, projects. It was basically like anything you could get your hands on. So there's like a ton of like little contracts. So like I never even bothered putting that stuff on my LinkedIn because like, why would you? It's like 2 months, 3 months, like mini project and stuff like that. And so that definitely fostered, as horrifying as it was, make no mistake. And I feel super sorry for the grads right now having to deal with another recession, but also a pandemic on top of that. But as horrifying as it was at the time, it actually was really wonderful for being able to develop resilience and making yourself adaptable to the market because the market was constantly changing. And so it was like being able to package yourself in a way and your skills in a way that was palatable, made sense, and stayed relevant. And so in a way that actually kind of forces you to stay on your toes, which is a really good business skill. And so that's something that like, I can see the clear lines of like how, you know, that '08 grad to now where I'm running my own business and everything's on me. And there are definitely like lessons and stuff like that I'm so grateful for. And for those early experiences, because like as horrifying as it was a wonderful trial by fire. So yes, that was a long answer, but yes.
Sure. And it, you know, I read a statistic somewhere that the average skill nowadays, the half-life of a skill has dropped from 30 years to an average of 6 years, which means, you know, it's like not what you learned in college is going to see you through all the way to retirement because things are changing so quickly. So how, like, you know, how often, well, in my case, I find in technology, I have to reskill constantly, or at least every few years, where, you know, what I was doing in the 90s isn't really, you know, I learned a lot about,
It's not really marketable anymore.
not really marketable, although a lot of skills were learned, but they're higher level management skills, not specific to the technology. But even sort of just methodologies around project management and like agile, all that stuff starts to, you know, the way they taught it 10 years ago isn't what they're teaching now. So it's really critical to just get into that mode of sort of continuous learning, which is hard as you get older because you know, I'm not sure why it's hard. Is the ability to learn, does it decrease as we age? I'm not sure.
I think there's probably a bit of dexterity that comes with it, but also I think for a lot of people, and I mean like myself included, learning something new, even though like it's something I have to do all the time, I always like I got really good at teaching myself how to learn something new. But the problem with that for a lot of people, and this is where I include myself, is the learning something new sucks because you're not good at it. So it feels more strenuous and you're just like, and then when you get good at it, then you get comfortable. So I think that it's that sort of comfort level, that comfort gap that I think becomes less tenable as you get older. And you're just like, I'm tired of feeling stupid. I'm tired of always feeling like I'm running to catch up. And so that I think might contribute a little bit to perhaps older workers maybe feeling like they can't keep up and they're sort of on this treadmill. But what do you think?
Yeah. Comfort gap. That explains a lot. That is me. It's all about comfort gap right now.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like sports and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to learn a new sport because I'm going to be horrible at it for a long time. But then when I'm good at it, then I'm like, oh, this is so wonderful. And so it sounds like you're the same way.
Yeah, sure. Well, here we are. Like, this is our 8th show on LinkedIn Live. Neither of us had done this before, and we kind of figured it out as we went in front of, you know, all the nice internet people out there.
Huge audience, huge.
I know. As I said last week and the week before, we're huge in Europe and Asia, starting to break into Middle East and Africa. So, but I actually, this is a good example. It's like, there's some risk around it. You know, we're kind of in on stage. There is no net, and there's no sandbox to practice in. We're kind of just doing this. So, and anybody in social media right now, they're definitely continuous learners because this stuff is going, changing all the time, and new stuff's coming out. And I know Leanne, who's watching right now, I think she might want to chime in. Like, how difficult was it for her to become an expert? Because that's, from what I understand, what she does now. So yeah, anybody out there in internet land, please pipe in on the chat. And here we go. A timely dialogue for sure. 2 decades in the radio industry, went back to school, Rutgers, earned an MBA, a mini MBA in social media marketing. That was 2 years ago. A providential move which has served to keep me more marketable. Thank you, Leanne. That's exactly it. So it's like, I think nowadays everybody has just got a plan to, every few years, every 5 years, whatever, just go back and upskill, reskill, and stay current. Just accept it. That's the new reality. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Kirsten, on that?
It almost feels like a tax. Like, that's just like, it's an accepted part of life. You're never going to be able to get in one lane and drive in that lane across the country. Like, you're going to eventually have to do other things. But this also goes back to one of our previous conversations where, like I mentioned, like, new grads are going to end up, instead of being asked, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? It's like, what 5 careers are you going to have over the rest of your life? It's that type of, like, I think we have to get really comfortable with that adaptability piece of, like, you're not going to go get a degree and do that one thing forever. And because it just isn't realistic anymore. But sure. Then that's a great thing, because then there's so many other things that you can do with that that's applicable. Like, when I got a business degree in marketing and HR, I did not expect to be ghostwriting and being a marketing strategist. And so, like, that never even entered into the wheelhouse of something I could do, or that was even an option. And so, like, thank God for that. But there are so many other things that we can't even imagine right now that I think people, like, they're within people's grasp. And it's just that adaptability piece of, like, how are you able to, like, be like Leanne, where you go, you take the course, and now you're like, oh, great, that was that last little bit of knowledge. Now I feel really empowered to go, move forward doing X, Y, Z. Sure.
It's interesting. Like, children now in school, like, the question is always, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, nowadays, the job that they're probably going to have hasn't been invented yet. So it's not a good question. It's more like, what do you, not necessarily what job, because then it's the job becomes the identity and people identify themselves that way. And especially in the US, we all do that. But it's more like, what do you want to do, when you grow up, as opposed to what do you want to be? How do you like spending your time? Like, I think if we asked ourselves that when we're younger, then we have more of that sort of introspection as we get older of, like, oh, this is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy doing, instead of what am I going to be? Because then you're sort of focused externally, as opposed to what skills should I be cultivating? What knowledge should I be seeking? Like, those kind of things. Like, if you're like, I like working outdoors and with my hands. Okay, great. Like, now you know the direction that you can kind of run in. Or I like working with people. Awesome. There's so many things you can do with that. Like, that's amazing. Go chase that dream, Right. So, in addition to resilience and adaptability, it's just sort of like critical thinking, like problem solving, which I can't really speak to it. Some people are very good at it, and others, not so much, but they're good at other things. But, chances are high that the things that they're good at will probably get automated away. If so it's if you are in a situation where there's disruption to your career and it's time to make a move, you want to make a move into something that's not going to easily get automated away. And oftentimes those are like customer facing, problem solving, creative sort of troubleshooting type roles, which not everybody is meant for that. So,
When I think strategic thinking can't really be taught. I think you either have it or you don't. I think it can be cultivated and and nurtured, and if somebody has that sort of flame, you can make it a forest fire. But I think it's definitely one of those, at least is either yes or no, you are or not. And if somebody is, then at least they have that basis of knowledge to be able to do something with it. What do you think? I know this is my opinion and my thoughts on it. Feel free to argue with me.
yeah, I disagree. It's, I think
Excellent.
that, I think that I've seen plenty of courses on strategic thinking, so those wouldn't exist if it wasn't possible to teach them. Teach,
Wow.
yeah, and I can say in my life, it's definitely something that it was more of a nurture than a nature thing. I sort of learned it by osmosis, and some of the people I work with now, I'm still learning from them, who are, I came up on the technical side, not on the business side. So there's some aspects of business that to this day, even though I've been self-employed like forever now, it's I'm learning new stuff all the time. So and how to sort of think strategically, and even just as importantly, like sort of the emotional quotient, sort of like feeling out situations. And it's not just about, oh, this is what's on my mind, I'm just going to say it. It's more like active listening, and between the lines, parsing what the person is saying, so you can see what they're really feeling as opposed to what they're saying. Like all that stuff can be taught. It's just a question of, it takes time. It's not an overnight thing.
Do you think that there has to be an ember there? Or do you think you can take somebody who has no awareness of that and no discernible ability for that and actually make them a strategic thinker? That is the question I have for you.
That was me.
So you think you considered yourself not a strategic thinker and pretty linear? Would you have described yourself that way?
More in the EQ department. I was a good friend of mine, another friend from high school, Leanne knows him. He once called me a bull in a china shop, because I would just come in and start doing stuff and knocking things over and making a mess. And, being somewhat, let's just say, not that self-aware. And yes, that was back in my 20s, and now I'm in my 50s. I don't mind saying. And
just people growing up though, and maturity and that kind of learning to read the room. I would not consider learning to read the room strategic thinking, but I think EQ and stuff definitely can be cultivated. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I was referring more to EQ than strategic, but yeah, it's definitely part of it is maturity. And, I had a college reunion recently, and I shared that I feel like I'm learning stuff now that my peers in my class learned 20 years ago, which probably not that, I don't know, I was just being honest. And I kind of don't mind. I feel like I was young growing up around everybody, skipped a grade. Yeah, one grade. And just was always around these older people. And I always felt a little sort of just playing catch up. So now, but I don't know. It wasn't just age. It was I don't know. I think I was, maybe I was sheltered as a kid. I don't know. But now I feel like everything, all the antennae are firing, and all the sensors are working, and it's a very exciting time for me. But to answer your question with regards to, can you teach strategy? Absolutely. It's some people are going to be better than others, but I think everybody can learn it.
I disagree. So we're fighting on that point.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a guest this week to balance to.
We need a tiebreaker. We'll bring the question next time for somebody else. Next time we have a guest and we'll bring them on, we'll make them decide. It'll be like a Thunderdome type situation.
What about like the growth mindset? Carol Dweck wrote that book, Mindset. Have you read it?
I have not read it. No.
I read it many, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it's like there's like a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And we all are somewhere in the middle or at either end. But ideally, you want a growth mindset where you actually, don't mind, like you make mistakes, you get back up and you try again. Whereas a fixed mindset is, oh, I'm not even going to try that because I don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I see that with my kid, and it often happens if, as parents, a negative side effect of telling your kid, oh, you're so smart, is like they're afraid to do something they've never done before because they have this self-image that they're so smart. And if they do something they don't know how to do, they might fail. And then that doesn't fit their self-image, as opposed to, don't worry about it, just go for it. Oh, you didn't get it this time, but you'll get it next time. And, it's like Elon Musk, kind of one of your favorite people, I know. I'm kidding. But I mean, talk about growth mindset, it's the guy, how many times he like keeps betting it all on these crazy harebrained schemes.
I'm not sure I call that a growth mindset, but it's easy to speculate when you're the one basically controlling it and you have like minions that'll do what you want.
I was thinking more like PayPal days, not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Leon just commented that this is a timely dialogue for sure. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Such a great point. That was her last one. So I think she's agreeing. I think
with you, or wait, am I going to be your tiebreaker here?
It is imperative for us as parents to model that for our children. So she's commenting on the growth mindset.
As the non-parent here, I will of course tell others how to parent their children. And if I may offer a token of advice here, especially as that also is remembering like being that kid and how paralyzing that can be, I would suggest instead of praising them like, oh, you're so smart, it's to praise oh, you're so resilient, you're such a great problem solver, and like sort of praising the skills as opposed to the person, because then failure isn't personal. It's the like, you're such a great problem solver, like you always do such a great job doing like whatever, this one didn't work out, next time, now you've taken the lessons. Because that, at least for me, and like that's what I would try to do with the kids I used to babysit, was it allows that distance, so success and failure aren't so personal, and then you're able to be a bit braver and more courageous when you're trying new things, you're doing stuff, and you're not like, you don't have that like all-consuming failure when something normal happens and you maybe don't win or don't get whatever. So anyways, that's your non-parent parenting advice of the day.
I read a book that said exactly that, when my kid was like a couple of years old. So, and it's so you'll do well when you have kids of your own, if you ever do. Not gonna happen. Okay. But what's weird is what's challenging is when you're around other parents or other adults who may not be so kind of tuned into the same stuff. And then they're like, oh, you're so smart, or oh, you're so pretty. It's like, please stop. Yeah. But, that's,
Mm-hmm.
Then there's some of us adults who have that same problem. People telling us that we're so smart and pretty all the time.
It must be a struggle for you to deal with that. How do you get through your day?
It's not easy.
I bet, especially in LA.
I'm sure it happens up in Vancouver. So, but yes, back to the point. How does a company foster, and this is for the people out there in internet land, how does a company foster a growth mindset amongst its employees?
I would start with the obvious part of like the wellness piece. I think, you're comfortable, you're happy, you're paid well, like that sort of, once you're satiated on that front, then it's like making room for like the psychological safety, being able to encourage people like, hey, if you fail, that's totally fine, but we fail quickly so that we learn from our mistakes, and being really careful about what that looks like and making sure that that type of behavior is modeled. Like if you want people to take risks, you have to be okay with them potentially failing once in a while. And if you want people to exercise their judgment about something, like you have to be able to give them the room to do that and not be like, oh yeah, do what you want. And then come look over their shoulder, change this, change that, da, 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 da. And then it's like, oh, okay, cool. So that's at least where I would put my vote.
So then a better question is, how do you foster management who fosters growth mindsets?
Okay. Well, I guess we could do two front. We could do management, and then there's like the actual employees. So that would be my answer for management.
Yeah. Leanne is on her way out. She said, good dialogue. And Dennis Inneman, you're very handsome as well. Thank you.
Dennis, you're on stage. We need you.
Yes. They're coming out of the woodwork.
Love it.
So that's, I can't say that I've ever, I've seen good managers who behave the way you just described, but I can't say that I've seen in my career companies that were able to foster that, Usually it gets political. I'll never forget one of the first people I worked with, and a good friend, he was a senior VP of sales, and he shared with me, like, there was a guy that was hired, and he'd been around for a while, like maybe 6 months, and then he disappeared. And I asked what happened. He was like, the guy got political. He was gonna like just become the cancer that like ruined this great thing that we had. So he got rid of the guy. He like, as soon as he got political, like he didn't wait. I mean, I think he probably waited a little bit and brought it up and tried to work it out, and it didn't work out, and he let it go. And it kind of, at the time, this was early on in my career, it kind of blew me away. I'd never seen anything like that. Mm-hmm. And it, now it's jogging my memory. Once this was in Hong Kong, and I was consulting to a large bank in a kickoff meeting. There's probably 10 people in the room, and the project manager, was going around the table, and one guy at the end was just like the naysayer. He just was sure that this project was a horrible idea. It would never work, and it would just be a waste of money. And the guy said, "Is that how you feel?" He's like, "Yeah, okay, all right, you can leave the room. You're off the project." And it was like, wow. You can do that. It's suffice to say, he did not have a growth mindset. But I mean, people like that in the future of work they're going to be hitchhiking in the middle of the desert. They're not gonna prosper.
Which, I mean, good riddance. Like, we've all been in meetings with people like that where they just suck the air out of the room. Like, I remember being in one, it was last year, and it was a particular project, and the guy, like the boss man, came in, and you could tell just and this was all virtual, and like you could totally just tell the vibe shift. And I was sort of like, because I was the outsider, so I was like, this is interesting. So I wasn't really saying all that much. I was more just to like listen and then be able to go away and take the information and do stuff with it. But I immediately saw why, because one of the junior people, like they were like the social people, like he was like CEO or something of that sort. He was big and fancy. And you could tell that he was just showing up to swing his dick around. And the people were kind of brainstorming and kind of back and forth, just throwing out ideas, really casual. And like, that's what you do. That's normal for the creative process, and just sort of any kind of meeting where people are comfortable. And it was really great. But then he seized upon some comment or some suggestion that somebody had made, and basically like tried to humiliate them with that from just like a suggestion. It was a brainstorming suggestion. It wasn't like anybody was saying, go do X, Y, Z, and this is the direction. it was just sort of that, let me deposit ideas, that riffing back and forth, just that fun kind of creative brainstorming. And you could immediately see just after that, like nobody suggested anything. Nobody had any ideas. Everybody clammed up, and it was just that like, oh, this is probably a really dumb idea, but, and then they would say something. And it wasn't like a minute before, it wasn't like that. People were just free throwing out ideas, and it was really fun. And then it was the like, you're that guy. And so those are the type of people who, I don't know whether he did or did not have a growth mindset. I don't know. But I watched him kill the growth mindset in his employees on that day. Like RIP, that's the day. And it was so interesting because I've been that employee that's had the CEO, whatever, do that kind of stuff in front of everybody because they're looking for like a quick power trip. But it was so interesting being the outsider in that situation because you can just see how immediate and how effective it was. And what was so sad, for me at least, was that like these people were in their early 20s, and this was such a big experience for them that you knew that they would never be able to feel comfortable doing something like that again, or at least for a very long time in another work environment. I don't know if they're still there or not. I have no idea. But it was just like really sad to see on a creative front. But then it was also really validating of like, oh, there are so many of them out there. Like, that's what they do. And you could tell that he loved it. He loved that power. And so those are the type of people, he knew what he was doing. And like, those are the type of people that destroy the growth mindset in their companies, whether they, not all of them know it, I don't know. But this guy definitely knew what he was doing and he liked it.
That's a darn shame.
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so yeah, very much top down. And then it creates an environment where people just kind of come in, they go sit at their desks, and it's fly low and avoid the radar. Don't try to do anything above and beyond. If you can just get through the day without somebody, pointing you out, then it's another successful day. And I've seen countless cultures like that. We've got a comment from Josh. He says that's a momentum killer for sure. It takes a while to rebuild that momentum once it's squashed, especially when done publicly. Key mark of a bad manager is to do that stuff in front of other people. I mean, if you need to correct someone, do it in private.
Well, there's some stuff that needs to be done in public. Like if you're correcting someone's shitty behavior, it should be done in public. For certain situations, it needs to be done in public so everybody can see that that type of behavior won't be tolerated and that they feel protected. But when it comes to something like, hey, your ideas maybe aren't the best, like you can have that conversation as a sidebar. It doesn't have to be in public, but like, yeah, those are the type of managers who just destroy people's souls in the office. And then they're like, oh, why does nobody have any good ideas? And you're just like, oh, geez, who's going to tell them?
I know. Yeah, right. So that touches on leadership and sort of, being able to inspire people. Okay. Preston Mortley. Wow. Good seeing you two as well. I went to high school with Preston. I've had 2 people from my high school come and watch today.
Got your fish net. They're all in there. Catch all the little fishies. Love it.
Go Santa Ana Valley, 82. Woo-hoo. Yes. I mean, and we're talking about future of work, but what you just described is the past of work, the present of work, and the future of work.
Kind of timeless in a disturbing, depressing way.
Yes, it is. It is timeless, and communication skills as well. Just sort of like being able to, especially in those group dynamics where, you've got sort of the introverts, there's always some, and then there's the extroverts, and they're the ones that are always talking loud and talking over people. And, if you're brainstorming, if you're the one facilitating that group, you need to be able to pull it out of the introverts, and you need to calm the extroverts down so they'll let the introverts speak and not dominate the room. And you kind of have to be self-aware so you can make sure that you're not, being one or the other. that's definitely, that, which leads into emotional intelligence, which, is just going to be becoming much, much, much more important. So,
especially in our hybrid work environments where like if you're trying to conduct a meeting like that virtually and you're trying to, encourage the introverts to speak up and encourage the extroverts to maybe just like take a break for a second, being able to sort of like know people's personalities, know what kind of things work for them, when they might speak up, when they might not, like those are what make good managers great. And those are the people that can foster like fantastic teamwork and loyalty and all those wonderful things. But like, you have to be able to know yourself and know your team. And so that requires emotional intelligence.
yes, it does. And I have to send a shout out to Jake Varghese, who is from a long-term client in the past.
You go to high
Yeah,
school with him.
it's
All right. Sorry, Jake, you're out.
Jake. I'd love to hear some thoughts from you on what skills, survival skills, are going to be necessary in the future of work. You know, just drop it in the chat because I know he's got opinions on this.
Thank you.
So, and then, with the hybrid workforce, I mean, that hybrid aspect where people are in the office and then somewhere else, maybe at home, maybe, who knows, could be the digital nomad who's traveling around the world. Being able to manage these resources that are undergoing, that are just in different situations, that's kind of well, it's not a new skill, but it's definitely more prevalent now, post-COVID. I shouldn't say post, it's not over yet. Kirsten, you may not have heard this, but they just announced that Los Angeles County is going back to masks indoors.
What? Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, it happened today. I heard it on the radio a little while ago in my car, because the Delta variant is raging.
Yeah,
So,
it's here too.
Can't say post-COVID yet, unfortunately. Sorry?
Pipe dream at this point.
Yeah. So, question for you and the internet people: what processes would facilitate workplace adaptability?
I think having a solid like work from home strategy so that people could like live their lives and do the things they need to do. But I would also like to see companies kind of institute even like a mandatory vacation would be great. Hopefully a company could kick into that, but also a type of like bullshit time. Like encourage you to be like, no, go read a book, go do whatever, take 4 hours a week or whatever it would be. Because now that, I mean, if you're able to work from home, you're saving your commuting time, like all those kind of things. It might look different for people, but just having that, and I mean, you could work this into your process, into your structure of like how your organization runs and that type of thing. So it's not just like people going off to do whatever.
I think Google does that.
Who does?
I think Google does that. Like 1 day a week, people, 20% of their time, they get to do their own projects.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. And it's been that way for a long time. I hope it still is, but like 10 years ago, they were definitely doing it, and it frequently turned into products.
Well, that also comes with the like very convenient for them, but more so the being able to have people like, oh, you've always wanted to like do yoga and whatever, great, go do it and we'll pay for it, and that kind of thing. Because I think the more people are what make workplaces adaptable and flexible. And so the better mindset people have, and that's through adaptive like wellness and just having that like mental relaxation in just like being able, like, that's why like, you go on vacation for a week and then you come back and like, it's not a coincidence that you feel like magically recharged and you have all this energy and enthusiasm. And if you could build that into a quarterly process, a daily process, a weekly process, whatever that would look like would be different for everybody. But something like that to get that like rejuvenating essence and build it into your actual structure would be awesome.
And you're saying that will help people adapt to new changing requirements. or
I
condition.
think so.
Uh-huh.
Whether it's like whatever soft skill you want to learn, or like say someone's like, oh, I want to go volunteering with my time. Okay, cool. Well, in that time, you're going to learn conflict management, dealing with other people, negotiation, like there's so many other things that people will learn from those experiences that they'll be able to bring back and bring to the workforce, bring to their job. And being able to do that, I think would allow people to be more adaptable and be more flexible, which then would benefit the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to that end, Jake actually comments that buying into the vision and sharing the vision is important, and it has to be more deliberate in a hybrid situation where people are working from home. So that, and that comes under communication. And it leads into kind of what you're saying. So that's, yeah, if you come to work and it's just like on immediately and you're like 100% until you go home, and it's that way 5 days a week, 8 hours a day or whatever, yeah, you don't get any time to take a breath or to scan the landscape and figure out what makes sense. Am I personally going in the right direction? Is this company going in the right direction? That's actually a really good point.
Like it's half the time, like I'll be sitting there, on a Sunday morning, drinking coffee, reading the Smithsonian magazine online, and then be like, oh yeah, I never thought, and then get some brilliant idea out of that or brilliant perspective or whatever. And that makes me better at my job and better at what I do. And so those are the type of things that and that's just like a little microcosm. And so being able to have like a bunch of those and have that time to like have a mental detox and that like mental breather, and then be able to go bring that to your workplace. I mean, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Or even to have, companies like Headspace where they have, or Calm, they have their apps where you can meditate sort of anywhere. Just pop in some earbuds and take 10 minutes or 15 minutes in the middle of the day. It sounds great. I don't know how many people actually do that. I know some companies are oriented around that. I don't know that 10 or 15 minutes is enough time to necessarily allow people to get it. You know what? Actually, it is. I do know that because I meditate, and it makes a huge difference when I stop, even if it's for like a couple minutes, taking some deep breaths. But
just like 10 minutes of like box breathing or meditation or listening to your like guided meditation, like whatever it is. But that also introduces what we talked about before of like the cultural piece, where it's fine and dandy to have that all encouraged and written. But if you're sitting there doing your thing and the CEO walks by and makes fun of you to other people in the break room or asks what you're doing, then that isn't really conducive to the culture. And so that's something that like going back to the growth mindset of like encouraging people to do it and actually like wanting them to do it and like demonstrating it, like leadership demonstrating it and encouraging it and really doubling down, I think sets the tone to make it more real, as opposed to for the folks who are like, oh, that's just woo-woo stuff that like doesn't matter, and being able to like really set it in stone, because like it does make a huge difference.
Oh, no doubt. That's very interesting. Now, in the future of work, if your job goes away and maybe you get 2 weeks notice or a month's notice or something, like, actually, I was going to say meditation wouldn't help, but actually it would help. It actually would help, even though you think it's mad scramble. But we're talking about these different skills, survival skills for the future of work. And if you're in that situation where your job goes away, it's almost like, okay, got to take a personal inventory. All right, well, what are my skills? What am I good at? Which direction do I want to go in? How fast do I need to find a job? Most people need to move to a new job sooner than later. And then it's like, okay, how much of this is just nice talk versus like reality? I don't have a good feeling for that.
or like how much of this is just lip service versus actually
Yeah, how much of
I've
this?
been laid off half a dozen times as somebody, like, again, in the recession, all that stuff. Like when you're last one in, you're first one out. And especially in marketing, you're always seen as a cost center. And so first layoffs are always, always marketing. And so like, yeah, like I don't think like I know for a fact, like meditation won't stop the surprise of it or anything of that sort. But it, like, as you mentioned, like it allows you to sort of reassess, like, wait, okay, what did I learn from this? What's my next move going to be? How do I stay optimistic? How do I stay positive? And then that sort of at least puts you in the right headspace to land better than freaking out, panicking, and going home and crying. You know, like that kind of thing doesn't help anybody, where is nobody's going to be saved by like a 10-minute meditation here, but it at least sort of like sets you on the path to something better, and it doesn't allow you to sort of spiral and wallow, in the sense that like without it, that's what a lot of people would do. Find a priest, find a liquor store, whatever it is.
And that leads to resilience and coping with the unexpected.
Yeah. And then you get better at it. I mean, it is a muscle. You get better at it by like your fifth layoff. It's like, oh, here we go again. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. And you're just like, okay, I already know like what skills I have, what I can do. Now I just have to tweak it from this one and go to the next opportunity and just keep pushing forward. Whereas like, if it's the first time you've ever been laid off, like, yeah, it is stunning. It is shocking. And like, people are reeling. So it may be a different situation, but at least that sets you up for a pattern to be better.
Yeah. 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 I didn't think about meditation, but you're absolutely right. It also, enhances creativity too. I mean, instead of the linear traditional thinking, it can more out of the box stuff. You know, when you clear your mind and you're just sitting there, that's when this stuff pops up. I think we might need to do a session on meditation in the future of work, Kirsten. What do you think?
I think we should, because just this week on, I think it was Monday, I was like, okay, I'm going to go wander down to the beach over here over on Granville Island. I'm going to go wander, chill by the ocean, and just sort of ponder and kind of clear my mind, and just sort of, I wasn't full on meditating because I'm like, I'm not going to be like at a bench randomly in the middle of like at night. And I just went for like 15, 20 minutes and then sort of wandered home. But at that time, I had a brilliant brainstorm for myself, for my own personal marketing, which is perfect timing for like all the stuff that I'm planning on doing for my own website, like my own branding. And it was just that like, oh yeah, like clearing your mind, actually giving yourself that space to just like see what comes up. And it was a brilliant idea that I'm like moving forward with in my own stuff. So like, yeah, I think we should definitely do a session on that, because there we go. I can speak to that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Didn't see that coming. Now we got a comment.
Neither did I.
Yeah. And we have another comment from Jake of Argies saying he thinks it's also important to figure out how to connect with video, like we're doing now. When you can see the person, you can also have more misunderstandings. When you can't see the person, you can have more misunderstandings. I think that's what he's saying. Keep the video on versus just audio. You know, I can actually share this. My business, WorkDone, my company is a Microsoft business partner, and Microsoft has their Inspire conference going. It started yesterday. It goes through tomorrow. And shout out to Microsoft. And one of their sort of strategic directions, I'm allowed to talk about it, is Teams, which is their competitor to Zoom. And what they're doing in their future of work, or the modern workplace, they call it, everything is based on Teams, which means hybrid, people are going to be wherever. So you have this face-to-face interaction, and from that you can spawn all kinds of work processes and ERP and CRM and Microsoft Dynamics and all that stuff. And when I first heard them announce it yesterday, I was like, I don't know about that. But now I'm kind of starting to see, to Jake's point, exactly, why they're doing, like whether it's like making Zoom the center point. Like some people, some disparate sort of remote groups, they'll turn on Zoom in the morning. Everybody has their computers on, and their cameras on. They're not necessarily talking, but it's there. And at any point, somebody could say, oh, hey, Kristen, what was that thing we talked about last week? And then you just respond. It's sort of like you're sitting in the same room, but the camera's on and the audio's on and you just talk. But it's not like, oh, we have this call from 4 to 5 and then we hang up. That's just how they work, which I don't think most people use video conferencing this way, but I see it a lot amongst technical people who, they might be coding and they might not say anything for an hour, but the camera's on and the audio's on, which I think is kind of cool. I mean, compared to having to schlep around in a car to go into an office to work.
Plus, it's the best of both worlds. I don't have to go drive to an office, but then if I need to be like, hey, Bob, what was that thing? It's a lot easier, and you don't have to be like, oh, hi, sorry, do you have a minute? Would it be okay? Can I, because like, I know for a lot, like for myself, like, oh, I don't want to bother them. Like, I don't want, it's just a silly question. I'll just ask on chat or whatever. But if they had their camera on like that, it's a lot easier to be like, bing, 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 hi, just quick question, like, and then just move on with your day, and it's 30 seconds. So I can see people doing that a lot more in the future, actually.
Yeah, I think so. And I have to reply to Jake. Yes, Jake, for the first time in your life, you had a good idea, and I'm acknowledging that. So congratulations.
And it's on video, Jake, it's immortalized. Look at this. I'll send you a copy, then you'll have it forever.
Yeah, there's witnesses. So we have a content from Shantae, alumni, a WorkDoneLive alumni. I find that on Zoom, most people are multitasking and may not be fully present, especially when they feel overloaded with too many Zoom meetings, even with the camera on, which she's got a point. Yeah, so what I just described is like a group of developers who under normal circumstances would be co-located in the same room, who could turn over their shoulder and ask a question. That's kind of what I was describing. But if it's a meeting, then yeah, it's like people show up, there's the meeting, you do your thing, and then, in the meeting and exit. And it's, yeah, and in that scenario, Jake is right. I would insist. I had a meeting earlier this week. I'm like, guys, please turn on your cameras, because like one of the guys I had never met before. And if I'm doing an introductory call, I need to see them. And there's no reason not to, especially if it's on Zoom. And it feels so strange to me now to just have an audio only call,
Yeah.
What's wrong,
Now, yeah, what are you hiding?
Sometimes people aren't dressed, or they're not presentable, and I totally get that. But I most communication is actually nonverbal, so I feel it's pretty important to actually be able to see who you're talking to.
Agreed. Although we look forward to the day when we're gonna have like VR and we can all be in the same room in like VR, or again, the world that Star Trek promised me, where we're like, and then we end up getting teleported to whatever area and then we come back. So there's two options I will accept. Either one is fine with me.
We'll get right on that.
If you could, that would be great.
It's on the roadmap, Q3. It's coming. Oh wait, this is Q3, Q4. So, yeah, these are great questions, great comments. Actually, relaxing. We have the question here: how can relaxing be a boon for business? I think we just kind of discussed that. It's but if you only relax, then that's not necessarily the best. There's a time and place for everything.
Oh, completely. Because I do notice that like on the time when I consciously am like, okay, I'm not going to think about work. I'm not going to think about whatever and try to have that like mental hum. When I quiet the mental hum, it's almost like a dam bursting of like ideas and stuff that have to get out. And so that's where like, I don't think people are designed to relax forever. I think there is almost like a buildup of like ideas and things to do for that. And so that's where I think it's almost like let let the ideas catch in the net and then release them. And that's where I think like relaxing is able to do that. And probably meditation as well. But I don't know if would you consider meditation relaxing? Like in that same vein?
You have to be relaxed in order to meditate properly.
Okay.
But some people would say just sitting on the couch and watching TV is relaxing.
Yeah, so that's where I'm like, because sometimes relaxing is just doing nothing, because doing nothing in itself is an activity. So.
Yes, that is true. Now you're getting deep on me. Yeah.
You know, people are like, what are you doing? And no, you know, like, I'm doing nothing. Like, oh, come do whatever. And you're like, no, I'm doing nothing. Like, I planned this.
Yes, I'm actually, you blocked out time on my calendar to do nothing.
To do nothing.
Or to not do anything. Not do anything, not to be confused with doing nothing.
Yes, exactly. And that's where like the ideas come out of nowhere and then it's just like a floodgate. So it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So this has been a good chat. Competitive collaboration, how does that factor into the future of workplace adaptability? Any comments from internet land? Competitive collaboration, that's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm. I've got my thoughts on it, but do you want to take a stab or let the internet folk have a first stab?
Yeah. Well, it looks, the internet folk look pretty quiet right now. It's what's the there's a term for a competitive collaborator. People who compete but also work together.
I think it's just competitive collaboration, but
yeah, I can't think of it, but it's,
I imagine it's going to be more useful in the future now because it's like, oh, like, why would I build my own facility? I can just like rent space with theirs or get their IP and have them build it. And, you know, like that kind of like margins are tighter. People like warehouses and stuff have probably closed down, things like that. So I think there's going to be more of a need for it just from a practical standpoint.
Sure. Yeah, we have a request to define that, please, from Josh Weems. He's wondering, what do we mean by competitive collaboration?
It would be like when like IBM and Microsoft teamed up to, or like Microsoft and Apple team up to create something, or like when the and that's how they got PCs into like every home, like Microsoft and IBM. That's how they got PCs into every home in like North America and the world, was by like, you do the hardware, I'll do the software, now we go. And even like with whatever regulation, I can't remember what it was, some environmental regulation where I think it was GM and the other big car, maybe it was Ford, they ended up teaming up to build the engine that would be compliant based on those regulations. So even though they're technically competitors, they built the engine together because it benefited both of them. So like that would be like in the vein of what I understand competitive collaboration to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, the term I was looking for earlier was co-opetition. So it's cooperative competition. And you know, it's like gas stations. You might have a Shell station on one corner and an Arco on the other, and you know, a 76 on the other. Not that they intended to do that. Yeah, okay. Josh appreciated that explanation. So how does that foster adaptability? You know, so if you're working together with someone, but you're for the same company, ideally with the same goals, but maybe, you know, you're kind of competing because you both want to do well in the eyes of the boss or something. I don't know. Does that make you more adaptable, or is it more just, you know, a fighter?
I think it gives you skills and insight that you don't have in your organization. And so now you do. So whether it's like context or whatever, because when I remember reading about where it was like in the 50s or something, maybe later, where a Japanese company and an American company teamed up, and just based on work cultures, the Japanese company was just like listening, watching, that, asking questions, and they were able to basically get all the information they needed. And so it was, but then the cultural like work style with the Americans were more of like, here are the drawings, here's what this is. So one may have gotten IP, whereas the other one got more of like a physical product, but both of them got what they needed and they didn't have in-house. And so with that, both of them are stronger, both of them are faster, and both of them, I would say, have a better competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's the sum of 1 + 1 = 3. I think there. Absolutely. Well, that's good. I think we ran out of time.
We did. I think we should add that one for another time because it seems like there's a lot there.
Yeah, and we didn't get to all our questions either. So I want to thank everyone out there in internet land for tuning in and hanging out with us, and for actually contributing. It's always better when there's the internet people chime in. Kirsten, I mentioned this earlier. I'm actually taking vacation for the next couple of weeks, so you're welcome to do the show.
Just talk to myself. It'll be great.
I talk to myself all the time. It's fun.
Oh, it works.
So, but I'm happy to say that we've got a great slate of guests lined up, for when we return. Starting with the esteemed Norman Rogers, no relation. Oh wait, he is my brother. Sorry.
Mr. Rogers shall be joining us.
Mr. Rogers. Wow, that sounds really weird.
I'm not going to get tired of saying that, as weird as it sounds. I'm definitely going to enjoy that.
Yeah, so that one's going to be a good one, because he's got a lot going on, and it's like we talk hypothetically about labor and the future of work and what's going to happen. He's actually doing it right now. So what day is he coming on? I think it was the 5th of August. Yes, August 5th. So thanks everyone for joining. And Kirsten, any closing comments?
Thank you so much. As always, we love having people commenting, arguing with us, asking for definitions, sharing experience. We love it. Bring it all. Till next time, we will try to make it up to you. Actually, we will. August 5th with the Mr. Rogers. So.
Okay, everyone. Have a wonderful end of your week. And we'll see you next time on the 5th of August. Bye-bye.
Have a good 2 weeks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.